What's up to my empowerment family? Thank you so much for you making the decision to watch and worship together with us today, whenever today may be for you. I never ever take it for granted when you tune in, when you share this, when you watch, when you listen. I never take any of that for granted. So I want to personally say thank you so much for it. And then I want to invite you right now to take a moment to hit that share button, to send this with as many people as possible, to share it with somebody that you know, to send it to somebody who you know may be going through a difficult time, challenging season, could use some equipping, could use some encouragement, could use some empowerment to help them be able to carry out their assignment, to help them keep going just a little while longer. I want to ask you to hit this share button. Your shares help us reach as many people as possible. And that's what we want to do here as a ministry, to reach as many people as possible and to see them empowered to win in every area of their life. We want to see people reached, lives changed, generations empowered, all for the glory of God. And your shares help make that happen. Well, by now, many of you know that on Monday nights, we have our intercessory prayer group. That's Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can hop on via Zoom, grow with us in prayer, pray together with us as a spiritual family. And then maybe even join our prayer team if that's what you desire to do. And if it's not, it's still a good time to come and learn and grow together in the area of prayer. Wednesdays, we have our book club where you grow together in community over a book. This one is life is 10% what happened to you, 90% how you respond. That's Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, where you could grow wherever you are in the world together on this book club. That information is available on the screen or on the church site, empowermentanywhere.com. And then right now, we're in this Lent season, this period of consecration, this period of seeking God, of seeking to hear more clearly from God, seeking to become more like the person He created us to be. And we're doing that by guarding our gates, right? This is a time where we are intentionally guarding our gates. So we're watching our mouth. I'm giving you a guide that has some scriptures about watching your mouth, the words that you say. What are you speaking? The person who you will talk to the most in life is yourself. Nobody talks to you more than you. Even as much as you may talk to God, you still talk to yourself more than you talk to God. So we want to make sure the words you're speaking to other people are life-giving. The words you're speaking about yourself are life-giving. The words you're speaking to yourself are life-giving. And even the things you're saying to God are the things that will grow you in your walk with Him. You becoming more honest and vulnerable in your prayers will allow you to be able to be changed and radically altered to become the person He created you to be. So watching your mouth, watching your mind renewal, right? Making sure we're putting the right things in and we're filtering the wrong things out. Watching your mind. There's scriptures about that in this guide. Watching your minutes. There's scriptures about becoming a better steward of your day, better stewards of your time, who you're giving your life to, paying attention. What you give your attention to is expensive. And I want you to think about your time differently. How is it you can better manage your time, better steward your time so that God can get the glory and so that you can experience more peace? You cannot experience more peace if you don't learn how to become a more responsible steward of your time. Because I'm telling you, locked up together in some of the stuff that you are continually doing is stuff you need to stop doing. And the only way you're going to stop doing it is by looking at everything that you do and everybody that you're giving your time to in every area that you're spending your time on and saying, wait a minute, is this highest and best use of me? Is this glorifying God? Is this fulfilling to me? Or is this something I can remove, or at the minimum, something I need to limit? So that way I can begin to step more into the person God created me to be. Watching your mouth, watching your mind, watching your minutes, and then watching your money. what it means to become a faithful steward of the resources that God has given to us. He says, if you will be faithful over a few things, then I'll know I can trust you to be rulers over much more. And some of us are praying for the more without becoming more responsible over what we have. And God is saying, if you would trust me and faithfully steward what I've given you. So yes, I want you to give back to me. He says, if you bring all the tithes to the storehouse, I'll bless you in a way you won't have room enough to receive it. So yes, he wants you to give, but he also wants you to steward. He wants you to see what's going out to others and not just, see, because I know some of you are like, yo, I give him $10. He's like, yeah, but you probably got more than 10 to give me if you would manage it differently. And the reason why you feel like you only got 10 to give me, y'all don't want to play with me. So watching your money, because some of us are just one tweak away from beginning to step into our best. Or at the minimum, we're one tweak away from positioning ourselves to be prepared for when God chooses to send us whatever he plans to send us. Because I know a lot of people, and I'm telling you, some of the worst thing that ever happened to some people was they got the financial breakthrough that they were praying for before they had built the infrastructure to sustain it. They didn't know how to manage the bills, and more money without management of the bills that they had leads to chaos. There's nothing worse than having more money without having more management. Because the most difficult person you will ever lead is yourself. So on this Lent fast, on this consecration period, on this time of seeking God and becoming the person he created you to be, it's not only about turning your plate away. You should, if that's the area of sacrifice. But a lot of us, an area of sacrifice is a financial fast. It's looking at how we're spending our money and stopping spending our money some kind of ways. It's a social media fast. What am I watching? What am I taking in? It's a negativity fast. What am I saying? What am I thinking about? Am I thinking about what I'm thinking about? On this journey, we're going to grow together all the way through Easter Sunday, so the end of March. I'm excited about it. If you're excited, I don't know. I'm not going to ask you if you're excited about it to say yes. I'm going to say if you fasted with me, just say yes. You might not be excited, but if you're doing it with me, just type yes in the chat. Listen, everybody, we've been in this relationship series. Some of the most significant decisions you'll ever make will happen based upon the relationships that you're in, the people that you're talking to. Bible says if you walk with the wise, you become wise, but a companion of fools suffers great harm. That's why this relationship series is so important, because it's not just about the person that you are with. It's about learning how to pick the people that you spend life with. So it's not just about a partner, but it's also about your friends. Because you may not get to pick the family that you're born into, but you do get to pick the people that you listen to. And so what I want you to do is lock into the series. Some of you are like, yo, I heard some of these before. Just because you heard it before does not mean you've actually taken the time to apply what this means into your life. Because it's not just, am I a hearer of the word? The Bible says I should not just be a hearer of the word, but become a doer likewise. I want you to lock in. Let's grow together. Check out this message. I believe it's going to change your life.
So Numbers chapter number 20. Verse number 6 is where I want to anchor our time. Numbers chapter 20, verse number 6. Here's how my Bible reads it. Then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the entrance of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. And the glory of God appeared to them. Verse 7. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron your brother, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. So speak to the rock. Tell the rock to yield water. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them and give drink to the congregation and for their cattle. So Moses is leading the children of Israel. The congregation is the people of God. It's the children of Israel. I want you to do this, and you'll bring water out of the rock, and you'll be able to give it to the children of Israel, the congregation, and their cattle. And verse 9, and Moses took the staff from before the Lord as commanded him. This is the same staff he's had this whole time. It's not a new staff. This is the same staff that he used to part the Red Sea. I want to be clear about that. It's going to make sense later. It's the same staff. Took the staff from before the Lord as he commanded him. Verse 10, then Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock. And he, talking about Moses, said to them, hear now, you rebels. Shall we bring water for you out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their livestock. Verse 12. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe in me, to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them. For some of you all who didn't quite process what happened there, God tells Moses, listen, I'm going to do a miracle through you. You've seen me do it before. I'm going to do another one right now. I want you to take this staff, but I just want you to hold this staff. Don't use it, just hold it. The staff was representative. Take the staff because the staff is what's giving you comfort in me and confidence in me from time and time before. The staff represents me. Take me with you. And I want you to speak to this rock. Tell the rock water will come out. Moses is frustrated. The people have been grumbling. Moses and Aaron listen, they leave the presence of God. They leave hearing from God. And as they leave hearing from God, Moses, instead of speaking to the rock, verse 11, he lifted up his hand and he struck it twice. And the Lord said, because you did not follow what I said, you shall not go to the land that I told you. His anger, his disobedience prevented him from going into the fullness of the life that was possible for him. For the time we have together today, I want to tag this brief exchange, help me from me. Help me from me. You ought to type that in the chat right now. Help me from me. I raised this question earlier in this series that I want to raise again right now. Have you ever wondered why you react in a certain way to some situations? Or why it is you may not be able to kick some habits? You see, it's all too easy to blame ourselves alone for our shortcomings and compulsions, but the reality of it is this. Sometimes our trauma, our experiences, good and bad, the things that impacted us and shaped us in our most formative years or even throughout our life, are rationales around our inexplicable reactions and some of our unhealthy habits. You and me, our experiences have formed and shaped reactions and unhealthy habits. And sometimes we should ask the question, what's wrong with me? But sometimes that question becomes deeper. Instead of it only being what's wrong with me, it should also be what happened to me. And I want to begin this message today with a statement. All of us have a box. All of us have a box. What do you mean when you say box? All of us have something on the inside of us that has been stored up with different things. All of us have a box. All of us have something on the inside of us that could potentially hinder us from getting into the door of destiny. All of us have something in us that could prevent us from living the life of purpose and living life out to the fullness of our potential that God has called us to. Some of us have boxes labeled insecurity. Some of us have boxes labeled fear. Some of us have boxes labeled regret, jealousy, unworthiness, envy, jealousy, unforgiveness, discouragement. And some of us have boxes labeled anger. You see, human beings are beings that are compilations of three dimensions. We have a spirit, we have a body, and we have a soul. Genesis 2:7 confirms these words when it says, "And the Lord God formed man out of the dust of the ground. He breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." Meaning our body is the case that comprises this exterior. Our bones, our organs, and our physical compositions are parts of our body, our case that we call a body. But our spirit is this God-breathed part of us that connects us to the divine. Our spirit is the element of humanity that gives us the ability to have intimate relationship with God. That's the body. That's the spirit. The soul, however, is one area that's not so easily understood. Because when the Bible speaks of the soul, it's speaking to one of the following components. It's speaking to our mind, our will, our emotions, our imaginations, and our affections. And God, hear me today, because you're like, why are you dealing with this? Because God is concerned about every single part of you and I, including your soul. You see, when your soul is unhealthy, that is an indication that your emotions are probably likewise unhealthy. And here at Empowerment, my primary concern when I talk about my responsibility, my unique calling, is I want to see your soul healthy, I want to see your body healthy, and I want you to see your spirit healthy. I don't want you to become a better churchgoer. I want you to become the best expression of God through your humanity. Yeah, I don't want you to do better things. I want you to become a better person. This is still our year of better. Every day, in every way, we got to keep getting better and better. And I need somebody to type in the chat, I can, I will, and I must get better. I can, I will, and I must. But here it is. Just because we have imperfect emotions doesn't mean we have to have an unhealthy emotional life. You see, I've talked about the imperfections of imperfect people, meaning none of us will ever be perfect. But just because we are imperfect people that have imperfect emotions doesn't mean we have to be unhealthy. In other words, we all have feelings, but our feelings don't have to have us. We should live with our feelings, but not be led by our feelings, because I've talked this before, because our feelings are indicators, but not dictators. Feelings should not be ignored because they point us to something that should yield our attention. At the same time, while they should point us towards something that yields our attention, your feelings should not be idolized. Because just because the feeling is real doesn't mean that the feeling is right. Just because the feeling is real doesn't mean that the feeling is right. You see, when it is that we allow our feelings to lead our lives, when we allow our feelings to lead our lives, we are literally living in our feelings. We become trapped in the boxes of our emotions, and we get stuck between where we are going and where we have been. We get stuck between our history and our destiny. We get stuck between our past, our present, and our future. And the larger problem that exists is when we become entrapped in this box of our emotions, this claustrophobic box of our emotions that frightens us and startles us and confuses us. When we get entrapped by it, we start moving around with limited mobility. And one day they'll come to a certain place when a certain door will open before you, and you will not be able to go through that door because you got this box that you should have dropped off before. You see, the box will become weight. The box will become a liability. The box could become a weight that leads to a sin. The box can prevent you from experiencing everything that God wants for you to. In moments, in opportunities, in relationships, in professions, it can hinder progress. Let me ask it this way. Let me take a step back and ask some critical questions to make sure you understand what I'm saying when I'm saying what I'm saying. Have you ever been stuck in your feelings? Have you ever allowed an emotion to keep you from experiencing God's best for your life? Have you ever wrestled with bitterness? Have you ever wrestled with regret? Have you ever wrestled through guilt, paranoia, anger, comparison, envy? Let me ask you this way. Who are you listening to that you shouldn't be listening to? Let me ask it differently. Who are you not listening to that you should be, but you won't listen because you listened to the wrong person before, and now you don't want to listen to somebody else because somebody else led you the wrong way? Because see, some of you all, I'm going to make this really practical, because some of you all won't let me pastor you, for example, because you've been pastored by some other people who misabused the Bible and took advantage of your openness to listen. And maybe it wasn't a bad pastor. Maybe you had bad experiences relationally. And as a result, you're now skeptical about people. And so the people who God has sent into your life to help you move from where you were to where you can be, you don't trust because you won't let new people in because of what the old have done. Who aren't you allowing to help you today because someone who claimed to help you yesterday destroyed your trust? You see, when you live in your feelings and when you allow your feelings to control you, you don't only inhibit yourself, you also stop individuals who are called to your life from getting to you. In this series, this message today, I believe, was sent to you to help God, as God's way of trying to help get to you about some things you need to know, because the fact of the matter is some of us have been allowing our boxes to prevent us from moving forward. Type it in the chat, Lord, help me from me. Help me from me. You see, some of you all are wondering what I'm saying has to do with the text today. I'm glad that some of you all are raising that question, because if you're in your feelings, if you're carrying a box, I want to let you know that you're not alone. You see, there is a man in the Bible by the name of Moses. And Moses can testify to the derailing destruction that can come upon well-meaning people if they get caught up in their feelings and don't get it checked. Yeah, Moses is a picturesque portrait of what it looks like to be used by God and never reach their full potential. Yeah, Moses is a prototype and a picture of what it looks like for you to be glorified by people and not reach everything God intended. What do you mean when you say that, Rev? I'm glad you asked that too, because many people use Moses as a story to talk about how Moses was leading disobedient children. We glorify Moses' narrative and don't talk about the fact that if Moses would have checked some stuff in his heart, Moses could have did something differently. I feel like I went too far, too deep time. Let me see if I can back up just a bit and bring them into this a little bit closer. Here it is in Numbers chapter number 20. We see something that I want to take you into. There's something that I want to show you, because here it is. I've been communicating this truth to you all before, is that your presence on this planet has a purpose, that God has a plan for your life, but that God's purpose and God's plan are God's preference, right? I've said this before, but just because it's his preference does not mean it's our experience. Just because it's his preference doesn't mean it will be my experience. What do you mean when you say that? I've said this before. God will allow us to live on whatever level we settle for, right? It's in Mark chapter number 6, I think it is, where Jesus is doing these miracles. I think it's Mark 6. Jesus is doing these miracles, and he's in his hometown, and it says that he's just finished doing all these other miracles. But as he's just finished doing these other miracles, it says he can't do many miracles in his hometown because they didn't believe. So few got what many could have if they would have saw him differently. Because his plan and his purpose is his preference, but it will not automatically be our experience. And you and I cannot afford to live a life where our purpose is not achieved. We can't keep gambling with our life like dice on a table, rolling it, hoping that today is going to be better than the next. without ever changing anything internally. Hoping and praying that we'll just keep encountering people who might be better and never stopping to ask, what is it that I also can do individually to allow my heart to be more receptive and more open to the possibilities of what lie ahead. You and I, if we're not careful, can end up short of God's intended plan for our life. If you're not careful, if I'm not careful, we can end up short of what he intended to do through us and for us. Can be used, but it not be the fullness of the potential. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Some of you all are saying, no, it doesn't. I don't quite understand. That's not what I've been taught. That's not what I've been told. Let me take you to Numbers chapter 20. Because here, Moses is a picturesque portrait of this. Because if we trace God's conversations with Moses all the way back to the burning bush, all the way to here where we find him in Numbers, we end up seeing something happening consistently. That God talks to Moses about leading the children of Israel to a place called Canaan, this promised land. He's telling them, I'll take you from where you are into where you can go. The entire time we see God talking to Moses, he's talking to him about this place he wants to take the children of Israel. It's the promised land. He takes them through the wilderness, but the promise is the promised land. He's called to take them out of Egypt into Canaan. That's the assignment. Other things that happen on the way are byproducts, but the purpose was to enter into Canaan. He kept talking to them about Canaan. So when Israel overthrew the armies and the enemies that were occupying it, God let them read. He kept talking to them about Canaan, this promised land. However, in Exodus chapter number 13, as they're making their exodus out of Egypt, as they're there, they end up, Exodus 13, here's what it says, as they're making their exit. In Exodus 13, it said that God did not lead them by the way of the Philistines, although that way was shorter, lest they see war and turn back. So he led them by the wilderness. So he's taking them from one place, planning to take them to another place. But he understands that while Canaan was ready for them, they weren't ready for Canaan. So he sends them through the wilderness because he's afraid if he takes them the shorter route, they'll see war and go back to what they were comfortable with. So he uses the process in an attempt to develop them. He uses the season of waiting. We talked about this before, right? Use the season of waiting as weight training to get them ready for Canaan. Exodus, this book of exits. The word Exodus means exit. It's taking you out of to take you into. See, they thought they were ready for Canaan, but they weren't ready for Canaan. They were ready, but they weren't ready. They were ready to be out of, but they weren't ready to go into. And I need you to stop right there for a second, because that's the truth of what some of you all are right now. You're ready to leave where you are. You're ready to step out of who you've been. You're ready to step out. You're ready for change, but you're not really ready for change. Yeah, you say you want better, but are you willing to do the work required to experience better? You say you want transformation, but are you willing to do what's required to be transformed? You say you want to break barriers. You say you want to be different, but do you really want to be different? You say you want to experience God's best for your life, but do you want to do what's required to experience God's best for your life? They said, I no longer want to be in slavery. But did they want to accept everything that came with the process of getting ready for Canaan? I don't want to get stuck there because I feel like I'll end up there longer than I want to. But I want to be real clear, and then I'll move on from here, that all of us, or many of us, maybe I won't make that presumption. I believe it to be true, but I won't make the presumption, that some of us are like praying for promotion, influence, opportunity, exposure, elevation. You don't get promotion without pressure. They go together. Purpose, here it is, somebody ought to write this down perhaps. Purpose doesn't prevent problems. Yeah, living a life of purpose doesn't prevent problems. Purpose doesn't prevent problems. Potential doesn't prevent pain. Yeah, having potential doesn't prevent pain. Passion, this inner being, this inner fire, passion doesn't prevent pressure. Promotion does not prevent pressure. Like, yes, I want this, and when I get this, I won't feel this. Promotion doesn't prevent pressure. More of anything means more of everything. And here it is. Let me say this one. This is the one that some of you all don't know. You don't know that participation in spiritual activities don't mean you won't have to deal with your own personality traits. See if I can say that again. Participation in spiritual activities don't mean you won't have to deal with the realities of your own personality traits. It's because some of you all are ready for the front side of the blessing, but you don't want to deal with the back side of the burden. So God sometimes will hold up the front side until you're ready for the back side. But what ends up happening here, he said, Israel, you're ready, but you're not ready. And just because you're ready for it doesn't mean that you're ready for it. So he led them by way of the wilderness. The wilderness was supposed to be a route to Canaan. They had to go through the wilderness, but the wilderness was intended to be a stage and not a state. He intended for them to go through the wilderness to get to Canaan. But mismanaged emotions can produce personality traits that you weren't always born with. And when that happens, some of us, the children of Israel, Moses, ends up making a state out of what God wanted to become a stage. He wanted to use that to promote how good he is, how sovereign he is, how strong he is, his way-making power. He provided manna from heaven, this provision that didn't make sense in the world. He used that hoping it would be a stage, and instead their mismanaged personality traits turned this stage into a state. It should have been temporary. The wilderness is one of those details that God left out of the conversation between Moses. Go back to Exodus. You never hear God telling Moses, I want you to lead Israel out of Egypt into the wilderness. He tells him, I want you to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt into Canaan. Because the wilderness was never intended to be this landing place that they would get stuck in. The wilderness is one of those details that God leaves out. And there's some of you right now who are going through a wilderness season. And you're trying to figure this thing out. Why am I here? Why is this happening? Am I listening to God? But I want to tell you forthrightly, the Bible is crystal clear. He doesn't give us all the details on purpose. Because you and I, if the wilderness would have been included in part of this story, I don't think Moses would have kept going. He said, nope, I don't want to deal with that. That's too much. I signed up for Canaan, not the wilderness. He didn't even want to do Canaan for that matter, let alone the wilderness. And there's some of you that need to understand this, that Jeremiah even says it, right? Jeremiah, and when he's writing his book, he starts talking about all this stuff. He's, listen, when you called me and you formed me and you shaped me and I said yes, finally, you didn't tell me I'd go through this kind of persecution. You didn't tell me I'd never experience it. You didn't tell me I'd never get there. You didn't tell me I'd never get married. You didn't tell me any of that. I quit. You didn't tell me I'd be rejected by the people I was trying to help. That's Moses' story too, right? He's rejected by the people he was trying to help. He's being rejected by the people he's trying to help that he doesn't even need. And there's some of you right now that you can relate to that. See, that statement went over some of your heads, but there's some of you right now that your life is all about helping people and serving people, and you're trying to help people that you don't need. But God's called you to an assignment. He's called you to do something, and you're experiencing frustration because the same people that you're trying to help are the people who are wreaking havoc in your life. It's Moses' testimony. The people he's trying to help lead are the people who are complaining about him. People he's trying to help navigate are the people who are criticizing him. Same thing happened to Jeremiah. So here it is. I'm using this to paint a picture because Moses' assignment was always about Canaan. But here in Numbers 20, God takes him to a hill and says, look, I want you to see it, but you won't go in. I wish you wouldn't have did this. Because now you're not going to experience what you could have experienced. I hope I'm making sense. I have no reason to believe this had to be the plight of Moses' story. That Moses dies with unrealized and unfulfilled potential. Because see, some people don't want to deal with this part of the story. Moses dies and does not reach the end of what God intended for him in the beginning. Because some people are giving an incomplete narrative of how our lives work on this planet. I don't believe it's always intentional. Sometimes they didn't know themselves. But when I look at Scripture, when I look at this narrative, I discover some stuff. I realize that Moses encountered some stuff, but I want to take you back for a second in the time I have. I want to take you to Moses' story. I want to take you to where Moses really kind of began around some of this stuff, because while Moses had an expected end at the end, he didn't experience it. And I want to contend it wasn't this final moment that stopped it. It was him unaddressing some of the stuff that arose earlier in his life that caused the problem. Moses, this man who's living with what one writer calls this double consciousness. You see, Moses' story begins in the beginning, and they say in the beginning about Moses that his parents and his mother knew he was no ordinary child. See, Moses was special. Moses, this plan for Moses, they saw it early. So because his mother saw it, she formed a plan and said, I don't want Moses to end up where he could. I want Moses to end up where he's supposed to. So she ends up sending him away to be raised. So he's Hebrew, but he's raised Egyptian. So he has this like double consciousness. So he doesn't quite fit in with the Hebrews because he's too Egyptian, but doesn't fit in with the Egyptians because he's too Hebrew. So God calls him after he has this double consciousness. He's trying to figure out who he is. Let me tell you what that means practically. Because we're like, what does it mean to be too Hebrew to be Egyptian and too Egyptian to be Hebrew? It means he's different. It means God allowed his experiences to shape him, but it shaped him in a way where he didn't just fit in with anybody anywhere he went. And some of you all are trying to figure out why did you go through what you went through? Why did you have to experience? It's possible he used all of that to tell you that you're different. Because difference makers are different. Not what I really want to deal with today, but you keep trying to fit in and you weren't called to fit in. You were called to break barriers. So here it is. As you continue to think about this narrative, it says that he's influenced by Egyptian culture. So he's had too much acumen, too much intelligence, too many experiences to fit in with any one people group. Instead, God uses all of those things to shape him, and then he tells Moses later, he calls him and tells him how he wants to use those experiences. Because God will always use your experiences. I keep telling you, you need to refuse to live with purposeless pain. He uses all of his experiences. So he takes him, he calls him, he meets him at this burning bush. And at this burning bush, he starts telling him how he can't be used. And Moses responds to God's call with his inadequacy. I'm slow of speech. And God instructs him, he instructs him and informs him, listen, I don't care what you got to say. I've got a plan and a purpose for you. I want to use you. I'm going to use you to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. and I want to use you to take them into Canaan. Canaan was this preferred future. And Moses has been given the responsibility to lead the children of Israel out. And as they come out, he takes them through the wilderness. I want to be crystal clear about this. And so he ends up going through the significant delay. And as he's going through the significant delay, he ends up in this place. As he ends up in this place, the children of Israel start complaining. All right? I want to be crystal clear about everything that happens here. But I want to take you to this thing, because somehow, some way, we end up in Numbers 20, where he doesn't end up where God called him to go. He doesn't end up living the life, doesn't end up experiencing everything that God intended. Where, how, why, what happened? Can I tell you something? He doesn't get there, and it's not because he had an unhealthy devotional life. Because see, sometimes we feel like, okay, we're gonna fall and we're gonna fail, and because of that. No, he actually had a healthy one. He had this kind of engagement with God that we would never have. Like, his devotional life was so on point that he would leave God, and after he would leave times of talking to God, God would say stuff like Moses, like you talk to me in this way, but Moses talks to me face to face. Moses had such deep encounters with God that when he would leave, the scripture said that the glory of God was still emanating from it. Yeah, Moses and God were so close. Come here. Moses and God were so close that when he made a relationship decision that his sister and his brother were upset about, they began talking about Moses, and God steps in and says, listen, all my other prophets, I speak to them in dreams and visions, but my servant Moses, I speak to him face to face. So the problem with Moses was not only about a imperfect devotional life, and I know sometimes we relegate our problems to that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't pray. We should pray more. We should spend more time with God. I know we need to worship passionately, but Moses had all that and still didn't make it. I'm not telling you shouldn't do those things. I'm saying that it's possible to do all those religious acts. It's possible to participate in all the spiritual activities you want. But if you won't allow God to heal your heart, you still won't live out your potential. Here goes another one, because sometimes we do this, right? Sometimes sometimes we say the reason why we do what we do, or the reason why we don't live out our full potential, is because you don't have enough Bible in you. I've heard that before. But Moses wasn't ignorant of the word. Neither was David, right? David knew the Bible. David said, listen, the word that I have, I've hid it in my heart that I won't sin against you. Moses got the word in a way where Moses went up to the mountain and God gave it to him, and he came down from the mountain with a stone, with tablets, with the tablet of stone. God gave him the word directly. So it's not a communication with God deficit. It's not a knowledge of the word deficit. He has a healthy devotional life. He's grounded in truth. He had information. He didn't even get this. He didn't even have a moral failure. Like, to some degree, we can kind of understand David and Bathsheba. He has this moral failure that happens. That wasn't Moses' story. And I'm saying to say because some of you you haven't done some stuff and you're trying to figure out why you're stuck. You've attempted to use some of the things that people have thrown out at you to help you make progress, and you can't figure out why you're still not making progress. I'm not saying you shouldn't do all those things. You should pray. You should worship. You should get in your word. But what if it's not only those things that are required for us to experience the better God has in mind? I'm arguing. Not that any of that stuff is incorrect. I'm arguing it is definitively incomplete. I'm arguing that if we reduce the Bible to this moralistic adjustment piece, where the only thing we do is we spend our time engaging in these spiritual disciplines. If we spend these times only engaging in these things, we may end up becoming better people temporarily. But the broken pieces of us will never ever get addressed. It's why some people can go to church their whole life and still never experience change. My conviction here, some of y'all heard me say before, God does not just want to save my life, he also wants to change my life. So yes, he wants to keep me from going to a Christless grave, but he wants me to experience life and life to the full. He wants me to have joy while I'm here on earth. Peace while I'm here on earth. He said he'll give me a peace that surpasses all understanding. It says he'll give me joy that's unspeakable and full of glory. And I don't know about you, but I want that. Joy unspeakable. Peace that doesn't make sense. How do I get that? How do I get that? Because some people tell us stuff like, if you don't have this because you're not praying enough. That's not always true. Some people tell you you don't get that because you're not worshiping enough. That's not always true. Some people say you don't have it because you're not living ethically. That's not always true. Moses didn't have that problem. Moses didn't have that problem. Y'all ready to talk? I only got my time is escaping me. Are you ready? I'm about to give it to you. You ready? Let me know. You type ready in the chat. Let me know y'all ready. Here it is. Moses didn't have a problem with any of that stuff. Moses had a problem with wholeness. Moses had all the spiritual accessories we need to step into the fullness of life God intends. But he had, here it is, this problem with wholeness. Moses had unidentified and unaddressed emotional issues that he assumed would be straightened out automatically by his spirituality. The unidentified, unaddressed emotional issues that he assumed will be straightened out through his spirituality. I'm not telling you that your spirituality won't fix some stuff. I'm telling you that some issues require intentionality. I paused because I wanted a Selah right there. Like that was a good point with the writing with the Selah. Think on that. Hear that? Because you can diagnose the problem right. But if you get the prescription wrong, you won't get better as expected. And some of you have done just that. You've done just you've assessed some of the problem, but you haven't gotten the right prescription. Because some things were working for Moses, Moses didn't see that his soul was suffering. His influence was growing, but his soul was struggling. I taught you before that greatness doesn't prevent grief, but let me also remind you that greatness doesn't mean that you won't have unaddressed heart issues. Because purpose doesn't prevent problems. You want to write this down and type it in the chat if you can. Behavior change without heart change equals temporary change. Behavior change without heart change equals temporary change. It means I can change some of what I do, but not change what's in my heart. It will only be temporary. Heart change when I refer to it, I'm really referring to what I believe in, which is called heart healing. Behavior change plus heart healing equals transformation. But the healing of my heart and the betterment of my soul is an inside job. Let me see if I can make this a little bit clearer, and I'll let you all go. You see, Moses, even though his influence was rising, he's leading millions of people, he was still the stuttering, stammering, confused, insecure boy that was called when his life was radically altered by this burning bush. And is it possible that he falsely assumed that because God desired to use him, it meant that everything was going to change automatically? I want to tell you right now, just because God desires to use you does not mean everything in your life will change. And it doesn't mean that your imperfections will become healed automatically. It doesn't mean that the areas in which you were wrong will become healed automatically. It doesn't mean that any of that kind of stuff. Because here it is, some churches, some people, some spiritual people, some religious people, some false doctrine teachers, if I'm going to go the way I really feel it, some Pharisaic people will tell you stuff like your imperfections disqualify you from use of God. I'm not going to tell you that. I know some very, 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 very imperfect people that are used of God. But here it is. Because I'm used of God doesn't mean I'm living out my full potential in God. I don't want to just be used. I want to reach my full potential. God's redemptive potential. You see, there's somebody watching this right now who's insecure. They're dealing with some father wounds, dealing with some mother wounds, dealing with some overachievement issues, some ambition issues, some anger issues, some bitterness issues. And they're going to go home right now. They're going to make a post. It's going to go viral. And all of a sudden, their influence will grow. But just because their influence grows don't mean the insecurity issues ever got addressed. Am I making sense? You got a leadership gift, great. It don't mean your heart got healed. And my concern, family, specifically for the body of Christ, is that people that we're having that too many people are chasing promotion and elevation and influence and all of these things without ever stopping to say, God, what on the inside of me needs to change so that I can be as effective as you intend? What happened with Moses? You see, at the end of Numbers 20, we end up seeing this anger issue. This anger issue. And I saw something interesting about anger I actually want to read to you. Anger, this strong feeling of annoyance and hostility. It manifests in rage, dishonor, and bitterness. Anger is based on a lie often that God is not a vindicator. Anger, through people like Moses being handpicked by God, to liberate God's chosen people, was able to part the Red Sea, perform miracles in front of people, but his anger was a constant trigger that ultimately kept him from entering into the promised land. Anger was the root cause that kept him from walking into the door of destiny, because the angrier we are, the harder it is not to allow the sin to prevent us from progress. I didn't want to leave that to my memory. I wanted to read it to you. I want to trust it to my memory. That's what anger is doing to some of you. Right now, that's what anger did to Moses. Let's talk about Moses. Some of y'all don't want to talk about you. Let's talk about Moses. If you see yourself, great. Because maybe anger ain't your thing, insecurity is. Maybe anger ain't your thing. Maybe insecurity is not it, pride is. Maybe pride isn't it, jealousy is. But I want to, Lord, help me from me. Deliver me from me. So let me take you back to Moses a little bit. I missed you last week, so let me talk to you a little bit right here about Moses. I'm talking about Moses. Let's see if you can relate to some stuff. So I'm talking about Moses. So he ends up getting called, right? As he gets called, before he even gets called, as he's dealing with this piece, Hebrew, Egyptian, he ends up seeing an Egyptian beating on a Hebrew. This Egyptian is beating up a Hebrew. He defends the Hebrew. He kills the Egyptian. But I want to ask you a question. Some of you all know the story. But what does he do when he kills the Egyptian? I answer it for you this way. He buries him. Defending one side, he kills another side. And instead of just leaving him be, he buries it. Can I ask you a question? What are you doing with some of your unaddressed issues? Are you burying them? Are you burying some of those things that happened to you, burying some of those things that you did, burying some of the experiences that you had, burying some of the things that you've gone through, and you're burying it, pretending like it will never creep back up on you. And just because it won't doesn't mean that your heart was healed. Just burying it, just because it may not rise back up, you think that it won't rise back up. But the it that caused the it will rise back up. You see, the it that caused the it was anger. What's your it? What are you burying? See, Moses says, I'm going to bury the evidence. Instead of stopping to say, what is inside of me that will cause me to act like that, I'll just bury it. Is that what you do? With your it? With your thing? What are you burying? What have you buried? What things? What's been buried that you think won't ever rise up again? I've moved on from that. You never got healed from it, but you moved on from it. Some of us move on from a lot, but we don't get healed from anything. What evidence are you burying? And so here, let me be a little bit more clear. Because here's what some of us do. We bury it, and then we make these promises, we make these commitments, and say stuff like, I won't ever do it again. We bury some stuff and pretend like it didn't happen. Let me hide what I did and then promise myself I won't do it anymore. And instead of pausing for a moment to even ask myself, why did I just do that? What is it in me that let me do that? What is it about me that made me say that? What is it inside of me that made me feel that way in the first place? What is it in me that makes me feel so insecure about other people's success around me? What is it in me that makes it really hard for me to be happy for somebody else who has what I want? What is it that's on the inside of me that causes this insecurity to rise up? What is it inside of me that causes this jealousy in me to rise? What is it about me that causes this anger in me to rise up? Why do I get so angry? I know you're angry, but why are you angry? I know you're sad, but why are you sad? I know you're bitter, but why are you bitter? Are you bitter at that, or are you bitter at something else? And because you're bitter at that was in your heart, you're taking it out on something else. Instead of asking those questions, instead of owning what they feel, you bury it. Have you ever buried anything? Have you ever buried anything? Buried it and acted like it wasn't there. Here it is. Because if a person says Moses has an anger problem, they misdiagnose this issue. Because anger is a secondary emotion. It's not just anger. It's not what you feel first. First you feel hurt, then you get angry. You feel that you've been handled unjustly, then you get angry. You feel robbed, then you get angry. So anger is a secondary emotion. So he buries it, kills the man, and buries him. And what's amazing about it? Do you see it? There's something amazing that happens here. Some of you all don't know the story. Well, here's what's amazing. God still calls him. God still uses him. God is still parting Red Seas with him. He's telling him throw sticks in the water, turning bitter water into sweet. I mean, he's having this incredible relationship with God. I mean, you would think that what he saw God do would have fixed this stuff, right? I mean, he's having such intimate time with God that God's telling him, listen, take off your shoes. This is holy ground you're standing on. I mean, he's having such incredible encounters with God. And I'm not telling you that you shouldn't have encounters. I'm saying that, are you bringing everything to your encounters? I'm saying you need to bring everything to it. He had all these great things happen. All of that. And he hit a place where the same thing showed up again. Because what was dormant was still present. What was dormant was still present. You see, Paul writes about this and calls it a stronghold, right? He talks about these strongholds and these fortresses, and when he's using that word, he's talking to the believers in Corinth. He's talking about this mental and emotional realm where these strongholds, these unbiblical thought patterns, these ways of thinking and behaving that are contrary to the Word of God and the will of God, they're functioning in a way where they're preventing the progress. Jesus talks about the same kind of dynamic in Matthew when he talks about a person's heart, right? Pastor Darius talked about this earlier. This person's heart and how that heart can become either like soil or like stones. I'm doing a message before this series is over about stony. Pastor Darius talked about stony hearts, and I might deal with stony hearts a little bit more about how stony hearts are the result of an injury, but that injury can create a scab. And until that scab is removed, the heart can't be penetrated with the word. Here, the only thing I want you to do is I want you to understand that there's some stuff that you've buried externally that's still in your heart internally. I need you to understand that. Because some people are wanting to be used, but don't want to heal, or don't want to do the work of healing. But it requires the work of healing to do what he says fully. Otherwise, you'll remain stuck, stagnant, and potentially miss what he intends. Can I tell you why some of us don't do it? It's not talking about our problem is not our preference. So we choose our preference over God's preference. And anytime we put our preference over God's priorities, we end up in trouble. So he tells us to bring all of us to him. To cast all of our cares, all of our issues upon him. Can I tell you what we do as a people sometimes? Sometimes we're judging people for these strongholds that they have, and these strongholds aren't just a consequence of the pain. They're a consequence of the pain that wasn't processed properly. See, because we don't teach people how to grieve, they end up with these stony hearts. And because these churches and some of these places that are open in the name of the Lord aren't really functioning in the name of the Lord, so we're not allowing people the space they need to heal and to grieve. We're not having honest conversations about emotional deficits and unmet needs to help people become the best expression of themselves. And that's what we're, because Moses' emotional issue showed up in a way that's blatantly immoral. His emotional issue shows up in a way where it's blatant. And man, this thing about Moses bothered me for a while. I've been trying to get to Moses for a couple of weeks now because there's some stuff that we celebrate in culture that ain't good. The people celebrate Moses but don't talk enough about the fact that he never made it in. I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about the good, but we should also talk about what didn't happen, what could have happened. And why? There's so much right now happening in our culture that we promote. That's so unhealthy. I got to shut this down at some point in time. I still got so many notes on this one. Maybe I'll pick some more of this up next week. But here it is. I need you to know this. That one of the most dangerous things that ends up happening. I'm going to come back and deal with a little bit more of this next week. I feel like there's too much here for me to pretend like I got enough time to do it. Some of y'all got things to do. Some of y'all want to go watch the game. You just want to go enjoy your Sunday. So I stop here. He strikes this rock because of this unaddressed issue in his heart. He went through so much and never said, Lord, help me from me. He kept praying these prayers for the people. Lord, spare the people. God was like, these people don't want to listen. They keep complaining. I'm going to give you a new people. Moses is like, no. Let me help them. never stops. So help me. Help me from me. What have you buried that you need to present to God? Because you may not be experiencing some of these symptoms externally doesn't mean that you're healed internally. Purpose doesn't prevent problems. Potential doesn't prevent pain. Passion doesn't prevent pressure. And participation doesn't prevent participation in spiritual activities does not mean you won't have to deal with the reality of mismanaged emotions, because mismanaged emotions produce personality traits. Some of you are how you are, not because it's how God intended. It's unaddressed emotional issues that we never took to God and that we never sought help in. It's not God only. It's God first. God uses people to come walk alongside of us, to resource us, to equip us. We need trained people to help us walk through this process. So you can't go to the people without God, but you also can't go to God and not seek the people. Some of you all, some of you know this story. And so some of you all are ready to argue with me on the basis of the fact that after Moses strikes this rock, water still comes out of it. You're like, Rev, how can God be mad at him and he still lets water come out? That's what it says, right? Read it. You read it with me. Verse 11 says, Moses lifted his hand, struck the rock twice. Water came out in abundance. The congregation drank and their livestock. I need you to get this. Just because God spared your life doesn't mean he approved your behavior. Just because he spared your life doesn't mean he approved your behavior. Don't mistake the blessing of God as him blessing your behavior. Blessed, breakthrough, opportunity does not always mean approval. God is God. God is God. So God isn't going to go back on his word because of your disobedience. He's not going to stop being God. Yeah, the children of Israel were thirsty. They needed water for nourishment. So he's not going to not do what he's supposed to do because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. And then some of you in situations right now where you're like, yo, well, God must be in it because I'm still here. It's like, no, that's not what that means. He must be approving it because this is what just happened. It's like, no, he was clear on what he said. He's just waiting to see will you follow the rest of the prompt. Will you submit all of your life? Imagine what would happen. Some of you all are experiencing the faithfulness of God, not because you're being faithful, but because he's faithful. Can you imagine what would happen if you lived a submitted life? Can you imagine what he would do with you if you allowed him into every area of your heart? Some of you all are the recipients of his benevolence. What if you were the recipients of your obedience? Oh my gosh. What if you were the recipient of a healed heart? He's done this stuff with a scab and stony heart. What would happen if you want joy? Give him your heart. You want peace? Give him your heart. I'm not telling you it won't take time. I'm not telling you it's going to happen overnight. I'm going to tell you that some of you all don't have time to keep wasting. I'm going to tell you that some of you all right now have an opportunity. All of us right now have an opportunity to begin living a life that positions us to walk in the fullness of the potential that God sees when he sees you. That God saw when he formed you. That God saw when he shaped you. That God saw when he made you. But are you allowing you to be in the way of you? Lord, help me from me. It said that Jesus came to heal the brokenhearted. It wouldn't say that the people weren't brokenhearted. He sent Jesus in the New Testament to help us where we are. Jesus came to do what we couldn't do on our own. He came to be the example and the propitiation, the Savior and the example. He came to show us the way and to help us along the way. But are you letting Him? You see, it's possible, but are you letting Him? It's available, but are you letting Him? It's there for you, but are you letting Him? I don't know when I'm going to finish this, because here's what I do. I know I'm being this serious until I'm done. So some of y'all are like, man, I hope he don't end this before October. I'm in this series till God says stop. Because I want you to know that what we find out about in Scripture is possible for you to experience. And I don't want you to continue carrying these unaddressed emotional things, infractions, this trauma, this anguish, this hatred, this envy, these things that Ephesians 4, I think it is, talks about how we need to get rid of all bitterness and malice that's in our heart. It begins by saying, Lord, help me from me. Deliver me from me. Lord, show me me. Show me the me I am and the me you see, and then help me become more like the me you see when you look at me. That way we don't end up like Moses, getting in our own way of God's plan and God's purpose for our potential. Lord, I pray right now for your people. Pray for anyone who can hear my voice, who's under the sound of my voice, whether they're watching this live or watching this back. This was a transformative opportunity if we're mature enough to receive it. To accept the fact that all of us have buried some things. We buried some stuff that we need to give over to you. Some stuff we didn't even realize that we buried it. We thought because we moved on, we got over it, but we didn't get over it. We just hid it. And it's developed these stony hearts in us. Lord, I pray right now for your people. That you would trade our heart of stone for a heart of flesh. That's what your word says. You will take out a heart of stone and give us a heart of flesh. I'm praying right now for stony hearts, for hardened hearts. Believing that your word is true, that you will take away the spirit of heaviness and give us the garment of praise. I'm believing that for some of your people right now, that they're going to give you the garment of heaviness, the spirit of heaviness, for the garment of praise. Some people right now are going to walk toward their I'm believing that that alignment would be where we would go. Believing that our life is coming into alignment with your plan because we're submitting. And alignment requires a process. Alignment requires pain. Alignment requires readjusting. But I'm praying and believing for a spiritual alignment. That our core will become strengthened so that every other area of our life will become better. We'll realize you want to continue to change us, mold us, make us for your honor and for your glory. But I'm believing that today is the beginning of a thing. You'll do something new in us and through us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Listen, if you're
Thank you so much for you staying locked in. Here's what I want you to do quickly. If you need to give today, if you want to give back to the God that has graciously given us, if you want to sow into this field that you're going to harvest, you can text the word empowerment to 77977. Text the word empowerment to 77977. You can give by Cash App. That's $Empowerment Church, $Empowerment Church, to sow into this field, to give back to the God. You don't just give to empowerment, you give through empowerment. Lives are changed as a result of the seeds that you sow. And while you may never know their name has a story. Every name has a story. And you're changing somebody's story through your generosity. I want you to think about that. You can give today. Some of you all are sowing a sacrificial seed during this period at the beginning of the year. We generally do a first fruits offering where it's a time of above and beyond giving to say, God, thank you for what you did in the past, and to sow with the expectancy for what you believe in God to do in the future. If you're sowing today, I want to invite you to sow. Some of you all are like me. You take a period, you take a moment, just kind of reflect over what it is that you're going to give. And every year I've done the best I could to faithfully give to God above and beyond during this period. I look at what he did before, and I say, God, if you did that, what are you going to do with what I'm about to give you now? With the expectancy, it's a thank you for what he did, but I sow a faith seed for what I believe he's going to do. Some of you all have done it already. Some of you all are getting ready to do it this month. Some of you all are going to do it next month. But wherever you're doing it, I want you to consider that it's a faith, it's a stretching gift. How can I offer up to God that which costs me nothing? I want to invite you to sow during this season. Maybe you need to give your life to the Lord. We need to give your life to the Lord for the first time, give your life back to the Lord, or join the spiritual family. Text DECIDED to 708-449-8197. DECIDED to 708-449-8197. We want to invite you to the spiritual family. We want to invite you to make your next step, take your next step with the Lord. Listen, the most significant relationship you'll ever have is the one with Jesus. And we want to invite you to that. You text DECIDED to 708-449-8197. I want to say thank you all in advance. Miss you all. I love you all. I'll talk with you all later. Share this with somebody else. Let's go.